and the failing state of man tells the story.
Hey everybody, this is Mendoza with the B-side. I am so happy to bring this show to you today. I have to say that I was a late discoverer of this band, but I am a hardcore fan now because I really dig the music. We have Tyson, McShane, and Sholz with us. Tyson and Aaron, welcome to the B-side. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Thank you, man. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so give us a little bit of quick history. I know this is probably something that's covered a lot, but tell us where you're from and how that little tight-knit music scene works for you all up there.
Sure. We're from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. So if you're not from Canada, that is, we're kind of dead center in the middle of Canada, which means we're far from everything. We're about 2,000 kilometers from Vancouver and 3,000 kilometers from Toronto. So it's in some ways kind of an isolated place, but it's a really fantastic music city with a lot of really great bands. And the history of this band has really succeeded because of the local music scene. I started the band solo probably about 15 years ago with the idea that I want to work with a lot of different people. And so that quickly led to a consistent lineup of 8 or 9 people. And then that over the years got refined to 4 or 5 or 6 and settled into this current lineup we have of 4 people. And through that time, we've probably had on records and live 30 or 40 different people from Saskatoon and surrounding areas playing on our records and playing with us. And so it really is something that I don't think could have happened the way that it did without the local music scene here.
The city only has barely 300,000 people. And so our art scene is really only a few hundred people. I think there's some unity here, at least in terms of like, I'm not sure what you or your viewers, what your conception is of where we are from, but when you talk to other people in Canada and talk to people from here, Saskatoon and Saskatchewan as a province is largely very conservative. And when I think about it, I mean, there's good things for sure, but I think what unifies our artist scene is that we are from a very conservative, racist, homophobic place. And I think our art scene has decided, as an artist community, we want to say fuck that and stand in opposition to that. So we're all very knit, I think, and connected because we're all progressive, liberal-minded people who believe in standing up for what we think is right. And that bleeds into our art and I think unifies us from all these different genres and like why we're really good friends with the people who are actors in the city and act in the community theater program and the poets and whatever. And like some of our closest buddies in Saskatoon are from the hip hop community here. I think everybody is unified because we resist the popular attitudes of where we are from.
I was just going to say, in our city, because it is so small, like I moved here from a much smaller center in the north of Saskatchewan, and I grew up on indie rock and stuff, all rock music and that sort of thing. Then coming here, it was kind of like, I was just into music and it was kind of like, well, what's happening on Friday? It's a hip hop show, so I'll just go because it's what's happening. And as I kind of got to know the music scene, there was seemingly a lot more of that where it's just like, you know what, we're a small center. You got to embrace what's here. And there's a sort of a surprisingly sort of diverse and forward-thinking group of people who, you know, were socially conscious and thinking about like not just let's do what's popular in this province or this country kind of thing. And so there was definitely, I think that like Aaron says, that kind of unity and like let's do something because nobody else is going to do it. So if we're not going to support it and if we're not going to push the boundaries, then who else is? So let's collaborate with some hip hop people or with some more avant-garde sort of neoclassical people and that sort of thing. I just have to rudely step away because my small child is kept yelling for me. So I'll be back.
That's okay. I actually wanted to talk about your small child anyway, so we'll.
Okay, so.
All right. So Tyson stepped away for just a second to attend to the curly-haired child in the red pants in the picture that I see in your promotional pictures there. Tell us about who your actual fifth band member is there.
That would be my daughter, Elspeth. We were playing a festival in Calgary when we got that photo taken, and my wife was to be joining us in Calgary, but hadn't arrived yet. So she came and hung out for the show that we were playing. It was an afternoon show, so it was exciting that she could come and actually see us. But she had a long day, I think, and so she ended up falling asleep. And when we were scheduled to work with a photographer that we absolutely adore, who was at that festival, and so we had to be a bit creative because I couldn't just leave my sleeping child crumpled up in a heap in a parking lot in the back alley. And Levy, the fellow taking the photos, was like, "Man, just like keep holding her. We'll work around it." And I love the photos because you made the point of being good. Me being a good parent and not necessarily showing her face and that sort of thing, but like the fact is, I've got kids, and lots of musicians have kids, and part of my life is taking care of those kids, whether I'm staying up late and playing rock shows and hanging out with these guys and whatnot. And so I think it actually worked out really great, as no idealizing the being a single young dude running around with no responsibilities. Like, I love my kids and love the fact that it worked out that one of them hopped into that photo by accident or unplanned.
Yeah. Okay.
In our band group chat, it will often receive videos of both of Tyson's children kind of jamming away with him, and we're treated to some of the most daring avant-garde deconstructionist stuff I've ever heard. It's cool. They're clearly into it and having fun.
Something that I heard a big influence in your new track was really heavy Sonic Youth kind of influence, in that I thought that Street Haunting has a the almost the out of key, purposefully out of key elements to it, or like it's very like film noir, where you feel like the camera's just turning a little bit sideways and the angle's a little bit weird and something's not going right here. Is that an influence on you in this song and in your music in general?
I'm a huge Sonic Youth fan, so yeah, like I hearing Dirty and Washing Machine and albums like that, alongside hearing My Bloody Valentine's Loveless or some Slowdive stuff, was kind of revelatory in me, and just sort of like, wait a minute. And I'm not a trained musician by any means, and so once I started getting into effects pedals, and even before that, just turning a shitty amp up and seeing how it feeds back and starting to figure out how to manipulate that sort of stuff was sort of pretty revelatory for me. And so yeah, that's definitely a huge influence for me, and something that I absolutely love getting to play around with that. And this was a song that Aaron brought the original guitar idea to the band, and was a lot more, I think it was a really interesting sort of guitar line that I didn't necessarily feel like there was stuff I could add in a traditional musical kind of sense. But as we got into it, it was just like, all right, there's places that I can just let my guitar squeal and manipulate that and focus that around the great guitar stuff that Aaron's doing, and Chris's bass and the drums.
Oh, that I dug the guitar stuff too, Aaron. That I think it was it's the in between note, right? It's almost like microtonal in a way. What was the inspiration for you in writing that?
Thinking about writing the songs from this album that's coming out later this year, like some of the stuff that I brought to the band wasn't inspired by music or other people's bands, I guess. So it's cool that you hear Sonic Youth in that. But like bringing that riff that kind of continues to go on through the song, bringing that to the band, it was, like when I'm reading books or watching movies or something personal is happening in my life, that's when I start writing. And so it's more informed by things like that, I guess. It's like stuff that happens in my life. Like these are the catalysts for like not knowing what to do with my feelings about this because they're so complicated. And so it just like makes a lot more sense for me to work through some of this stuff through music, because sometimes words kind of just fail you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you think about like some of the greatest filmmakers in history who talk about like, you know, people ask them, why do you make movies? And it's like, well, it's because I have something to say. But there's actually a really great, if you haven't seen Black Bear with Aubrey Plaza, there's a really great line in that where somebody asks her, like, why are you a movie director? Her character is a movie director. And she says, I think I have something to say, but I just can't say it in words. Like I have to say it in film. And that really resonated with me.
What about for you, Tyson? What's your process for writing?
This is a great conversation because Aaron is a trained musician and in a lot of ways one of the people who sort of shapes a lot of stuff with the band and kind of can explain the things that we're doing, whereas I'm not that guy. A lot of stuff I do musically is really intuitive. I rely on starting, usually it's a process of starting with a lot of pedals and a lot of effects to kind of lay out a general idea and then layering stuff on top of that, and then pulling back a lot of those effects. And so a lot of the music we've done the last few years and is I've been deliberately trying to use less effects, and you know, sometimes that works out where I don't use that many effects, but sometimes once we're recording it kind of gets added back into it. But because I'm not a trained musician, and partly inspired by listening to bands like Sonic Youth, where they threw out the rules and just said, like, let's find something that works and play with sound, as opposed to necessarily thinking this perfectly constructed chord. Gave me a bit of that confidence just to run with things. And then also having people like Aaron and Jordan, our drummer's also a trained musician, and Chris is a lot more intuitive like me. It's sort of there's definitely times when I imply that I have something well thought out and bring it to the band and try to guide it, but can't necessarily explain what it is. And the great thing about working with this group of people and generally the people that I've worked with over the years is that they've been incredibly generous in tolerating my attempts at explaining something that using the wrong words and the wrong time signatures and whatnot. And then being able to work with that group to really shape something. So a lot of times it really just starts with messing around with pedals and laying down essentially a big pad of delay and feedback, and then building something out of that, then throwing it at the wall, i.e. the guys, and then seeing what comes of it. I'm not the kind of person who can sit down and be confident that I can capture something that's in my mind, because I'm not as competent a musician as somebody like Aaron, but I feel like I'm intuitive enough with it that I can shape a song and work with others to really find a way to make it into something that I'm excited about. It's like this song that we've just released the other day is the first of a bunch of songs that we've worked on that will be coming out at some point in this next year. And I've said a bunch of times with this album, the kind of the theme for me is going with something that's maybe less comfortable to me, or maybe less into. So again, the history of this band is because I started it and have worked with a lot of different people. I have the good fortune and sort of the misfortune of people trusting me, because which has always been interesting because I've worked with some really fantastic musicians. And so previous albums, I've really been able to, people defer to me. And I've said this iteration of the band, when I say that, it's, you know, we're going back 6 years or so with this group of people, and Chris has been playing, we've been playing together in this band for probably 15 years almost. And the last album we did, 100% Sunshine, I think was so fully realized in stuff that I wanted to do. I included songs that I've been wanting to find a band to play with that I wrote when I was 17, like the first 2 songs I ever wrote that never seemed to fit with any bands that I was playing in, and they made sense with this lineup. And then we got to go to Castle of Doom Studios in Glasgow, Scotland, to work with Tony Dugan to mix it. Tony's produced a bunch of the Mogwai records and Belle Sebastian and Teenage Fan Club, and it's anybody who knows me knows that Mogwai's my favorite band of all time. So it was just kind of like I got to take all these songs I've been thinking about for years and the new songs that we wrote as a band kind of lined up with them. Then I got to go to the guy who's worked on my favorite records and get this record done. And I was really excited about it. The sounds were fantastic. Like Tony's an unreal engineer and mixer. And so with this album, it was kind of like, well, I got to do that. What are we going to do? Just do the same thing if like Tyson gets to make his dream record again? That's not exciting to me. And the fact is, like, Aaron has been taking a lot more leadership in writing songs and bringing stuff to the band. We've just been playing together so well as a band, and so this new album was a lot more collaborative and a lot more where I think I said it enough times to the guys to stop deferring to me on stuff that there was a lot more where people were suggesting things that weren't necessarily what was intuitive to me, but I feel like every time that kind of happened, it got more exciting to me. And so even like I would have been super happy to go back to Tony Dugan or work with Jace Lassick that we worked with a few years ago on a different record, because those guys do the stuff that just I've listened to for ages. Whereas working with Alaska B from Yamataka Sonic Titan, she's such a fantastically boundary pushing musician, and having Aaron writing a lot more of the basic ideas of the songs and kind of helping with or taking on a lot more leadership of arrangement. It is exciting, and I'm still uncomfortable with a little bit of it, but I think that's a really, really good thing.
That's very connected as well to some of the guest musicians we had on this record that's coming out. One of the musicians that played is a friend of ours, Gan, whose artist name is Respectful Child. And the reason we asked Gan to come in, so Gan does like kind of ambient music that's based around violin. So like violin and like tape loops and effects and stuff like that. It's really cool. And so when we asked Gan to come in, they were like, so what do you want me to do? And our instruction was like, just like do your thing, homie. Like that's like why we wanted it there, right? It's just like we've heard Respectful Child, and so our instruction to them was very minimal, because we just said like you are the master at like textural sound design with your violin. And so they were doing really cool stuff like crumpling aluminum foil and paper over the pickup in their violin and running that through a bunch of different pedals. And then we had our friend Darren Miller, who has his PhD in composition, and he used a visual programming language called Max, or Max MSP Jitter, I think is what it's also known as. And so he was taking all of Gan's recorded violin and putting it into this programming language and like stitching things together for sound design. So we have all this experimental shit all over the record. And so very much like what you were saying earlier, Nine, just like, we just brought in people that we trusted because we just like come and do your thing.
We're just fans.
Let's talk a little bit about studio. Let's go back a little bit though and talk about Tony Dugan. I'm a huge fan of Tony because the music to me has such a clarity in it, right? Like you can have all kinds of distortion, or it can be all kinds of like different things happening at the same time, but you don't lose track of stuff, which I think happens often in music that whoever is engineering it doesn't quite get how to prepare the layering, or even how to have initially taken care of the recording, and even if some of it was like, you know, laid live analog and stuff like that, how to run the mics properly, and then you lose stuff in like a jumble. Thing that I always dug about Dugan as an engineer was that you didn't lose that on anything.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know if I've said this as clearly to the guys in the band, but one of the things that influenced this new batch of songs the most for me was being over there in Scotland, because I was the only one that went over there because we didn't have a lot of money. So one of us went over there, and that was me. And sitting there with Tony while he was mixing stuff, it was really interesting because he's wonderfully charming and sarcastic Scottish fellow. So he talked shit about me and my bandmates a ton while I'm there, and in the most charming and welcoming way. But he was really,
it's genetically Scottish, man. We can't help it. It's yeah. Like the sarcasm is inlaid in us. Yeah.
Exactly. But he was like, it was fantastic because it's so rare to have somebody who is just that comfortable being blunt, where he was just like, what the hell do you want me to do with this? You guys just recorded a whole bunch of shit. And like, which do you want? Like, what do you actually want? Like, which is the thing you want me to make sure is clear? Because all my job is to make whatever's there sound good. Like, and he just hammered it home to me where it's just like, if I was producing this, like, I would have told you, like, figure out your freaking parts, buddy, and like, then we'll record it, as opposed to just like layering it and trying to find something in the layering. And we kind of got that a little bit from people we worked with locally here, Chad Munson, who co-produced that record, and Barrett Ross, who engineered it, where both of them were pushing us to demo more. And it's always been something we wanted to do, but never really had the resources or the time. It was always, we were in a period of every year and a half, we put out a record and we'd go tour for 3 months of the year. And it was just constant. And so with this record, based on all that fantastic criticism, we spent a lot more time trying to pull out those parts where it's like, okay, Aaron and I would sit and play our guitar parts, just the two of us, and play through different effects and different tones and that sort of thing to really figure it out. Because it really was like working with Tony. He just, like he said it over and over again, the reason you're hearing that on those Mogwai records is because they come in knowing what they're doing.
So you guys do have a full album coming out?
The plan for us, because it's been a few years since the last album came out, was just to release this single to remind people that we exist and start thinking about what's going on. But the plan is to put out an album this fall. Theoretically, vaccine rollout's going to happen and we're all going to get vaccines next month. And so that to me says like, well, maybe we could get on a plane to England or Europe or wherever in the fall. So we're planning for that, but we're also deliberately putting out waiting till fall to put out the record so that we can keep touring it into 2022. So the hope is to, we always tour pretty hard and have been really fortunate to be invited over to England a bunch of times and to Europe and that sort of thing. Not as much having spent time in the States, but still we played South by Southwest and CMJ and that sort of stuff. So when touring is an option, we're definitely keen to be doing that and want to do as much of that as possible and make sure that putting out the album leads to that. How
has the pandemic affected your local venues? Because for a lot of us down here in Tucson, we've got just a ton of really, really great venues, and then like half of them closed down and permanently, and then there's like 2 or 3 of them that are still like kind of going with 15 people in the bar at a time or whatever. But it's like been a really big kind of decapitation for a lot of the scene. What's it like there, especially being a small community?
We've been really lucky that no venues have closed down. There hasn't been live music for a year now, essentially. But luckily all the main venues are still open. They run restaurants, and one that's like kind of our spiritual home, Amigos Cantina, is a fantastic Tex-Mex place, and they've been smart their entire 30 years of being a venue where they're just music bands who run a rad restaurant and so they make their money off have historically just made their money off of the restaurant. And they're like, sweet, as long as the bands break even, then we're good to go. And I think that served them really well. That it is so people love the food, and cannot wait for them to start doing live music again because people will flock to it. Okay. You can entirely thank that place for anything I've ever done musically. Never have played in bands, never have met all the people I know, like met my wife there. First place I took my kids when we went out for food, and for years we would just play a CD release show or album release show or tour kickoff show there, and I would pay for gas all the way across Canada because they care about bands, so they'd make sure that we were paid well, and if something didn't work out, they would make sure that they'd make up for it and make sure that we're in a position where we could still be a band. So we owe everything to Amigos.
New video for the new track for Street Haunting is a very interesting video. Tell me a little bit how this came together. And
Yeah, I filmed and edited the video. Previously we've done music videos where we hired somebody whose job it was to come up with the concept and storyboard everything. And they've like our former videos are awesome. They look great. But this time around, just because I come from a DIY background, being involved in the punk and hardcore communities, we just thought, like, why don't we just make music videos ourselves and do like a low budget or no budget video like this? It was shot on my smartphone, and I just edited it using free editing software. And like warts and all, it's a video that I think we're all happy with and proud of because it puts on display our band's collective sense of humor, reflected kind of the things I grew up on. But yeah, so it was like much music and like 90s skate videos.
yeah,
A lot of the, when you watch old VHS copies of some of the classic skate videos from the late 90s, even early 2000s, there's lots of great skate footage, and then there's like other footage where it's kind of like goofy or pranks or whatever. So I wanted to take that stuff that I loved and put it back into a music video.
Fellas, thank you so much for being on the show. I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I hope nothing but the best from this album. I just dig your new track. I think it's absolutely just really cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having us. It was great to chat with you. Really good to chat.
Yeah, it was really good to chat to you too. Thanks again, Aaron.
Thanks, homie. It was great.
Haunted, that's the missing link for us. Built of bricks and a failing state of man. Tells the story of a secret history of something new, something that won't change at all.